Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications. Marketing teams move fast in 2025, faster than governance, faster than clarity, and in many cases, faster than confidence. AI showed us what's possible, but it also exposed where strategy, culture, and leadership we're missing. In today's episode, we're unpacking what actually worked, what quietly failed, and how smart marketers are recalibrating for AI strategy in 2026. You'll learn how to move beyond experimentation, how to align people and process with AI adoption, and how to avoid the trust gaps that are already costing teams momentum. My guest today has been in the middle of all these conversations with CMOs, comms leaders, and executive teams all year. Liza Adams brings a grounded, people-first lens to AI transformation, and she's here to help us separate real progress from performative adoption.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to the show again, Lisa.
Hey, Lori, great
my
to
God.
see you. Happy New Year.
I tell you, it is so good to see you. One of my dear, dear people in life. We've known each other for probably 10 years now.
Oh, yes, at least.
You've been on the show a few times. You've hired the agency a few times. We've worked back and forth so much as you've really carved out this incredible niche. What a niche you have in the marketplace. Before we get there and really lean into the Liza insights that are so incredible, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Yeah, the journey. Let me tell you what I'm doing now, and I'm kind of just going to back up to what led me here. So I tell people I am officially retired from corporate life, and I like saying that. It feels kind of good.
Gosh.
Uh,
And you worked with the biggies. I mean, big corporate industry.
big
Yeah.
corporate, right? Juniper Networks, now part of HPE, Brocade, now Broadcom, WorldCom, now part of Verizon, Smartsheet, big companies. And then my last role as CMO of a company here in Colorado where I worked with you. But now what I'm doing is I'm truly following and pursuing my passion. And many think I'm passionate about AI, and I'm actually not. I'm passionate about elevating the strategic value of marketing and go-to-market functions. Because as I exited my last company, I decided that I wanted to try my hand at serving on boards, but found out that there are only 41 marketers in the Fortune 1000 boards, and less than 3% of all board members have marketing experience. And it's largely because we are deemed as tacticians rather than strategists. So that is now my passion, is to elevate our strategic value, use business as a force for good, and ensure diverse voices at every table. AI just happens to be an amplifier of those passions, and it's a means to an end. And so that's why I do what I do now. I am an AI advisor and go-to-market strategist. I inspire people, go-to-market teams, and their leaders with what's possible with AI, and help transform teams into hybrid human plus AI organizations.
Well, and I think all of our listeners and viewers today are going to be transformed as well. You seem to do a very, very good job at that. You speak with a wide range of marketings and comms leaders, across the world, quite frankly. What patterns were impossible to ignore this year? What were you seeing from them that was just one right after another?
Yeah, I think there's this big shift around thinking about AI primarily as a question and answer machine. So I think, people, many, particularly the Trailblazers, realized fairly quickly in 2025 that there was much more to AI than it being a question and answer machine, or a vending machine, or a magic 8 ball,
Or
like
copywriter,
yeah,
Yeah.
or a copywriter, right? We actually began thinking about it as a thought partner, and then furthermore began thinking about it as a teammate. And that's a hard shift. It's truly a mindset shift, right? And I've always said, uh, I'm not a big proponent of AI for the sake of AI, but when I think about it as a teammate, I think about the superpowers and the limitations of humans, and then likewise the superpowers and limitations of AI, because we have very different superpowers, right? So me as a human being, I have bad memory and I'm affected by my environment, but AI isn't.
Yeah.
On the other hand, AI also doesn't have a moral compass. I have to guide it with my moral compass so that it knows right from wrong. And, it doesn't have context about what's important to me. So it doesn't know my purpose, my passions, my fears. So I have to tell it all those things. So when you combine humans and AIs and you treat each other as teammates and you work responsibly together, I feel like we get the best of both worlds.
Well, and that's, I mean, you define this in a lot of your incredible articles that you write, and quite frankly, a lot of speaking tours that you're on as well. You talk a lot about people first, AI forward. Before we get too tactical and really dive into some of what you saw in 2025 and some of the changes that we're going to see in 2026, how do you personally define people first, AI forward?
Yeah, and I've kind of given a little bit more insight into what I believe there, with humans and AIs having complementary superpowers and overcoming each other's weaknesses, right? In anything that we do when we team up with AI, we do need to think about how it affects the individual, the person, right? And I do believe that AI is an amplifier of intent. So whatever that intent might be, if it's good intent, then awesome. It amplifies it, right? If it's bad intent, then it will amplify that as well. So it is a tool. So if you use it to do good things, or you use it for strategy and it will strategize with you, you use it to cheat, it will cheat for you, right? So I think that's why I say people first, ground it on what the intent is, and then the AI will amplify whatever that is.
Well, and what you're showing us is it's doing a very good job amplifying just a lot of different strategic directions. And let's dive into some of that right now. When you look back on 2025, what is the biggest misconceptions leaders have right now about AI adoption?
Yeah, so there's three, but the first one is really around that the bulk of the value will be around productivity.
Right.
Right? Like, make things go faster, make things save time, all sorts of things. And I argue that if we simply use AI and train AI to do our jobs faster, we're almost creating a business case unintentionally to automate the human out.
Right.
But when we think about AI as something that can help us innovate, or something that can reimagine work and rethink how work gets done so that we can grow the business, then you can see how people become more essential to the business, right? So,
Well, and you've consulted with a lot of teams that are actually building digital twins and staff members within an AI environment to help increase productivity. So it's not just that you use it I love this. I wrote this down because I use this all the time with my own team. You always have said, in the 10 years I've known you, let's work smarter, not harder. And that is, you've always said that. And that's what a lot of this is. But at the end of the day as well, people want to know what's the net effect. So if we're going to invest in AI and we're going to invest in making sure that we can actually backfill positions or work faster, what do you have to say to them?
Yeah, faster is just the starting point, right? To my point earlier, we can't stop there. We actually have to push to think differently. And if we look at history, 60% of the jobs that we have today did not exist in 1940, which is such an interesting stat. We no longer have elevator operators and we don't have stenographers anymore. However,
Our gas for us. I mean, yeah.
right?
Ah,
But we now have software developers and we now have social media managers, right? And those did not exist before. And it is largely because of technology. And what happened is that people adopted the technology and have adapted over time. So technology gave us more time to do new things and to reimagine the work. And I think that will happen again, right? But the change is happening faster than previous technologies. And I think that's where many of us get tripped up. Are we able to adapt fast enough?
and there's a stat out there. I think it might be by McKinsey. So this is just how fast it is moving. And this is specifically regarding the AI teammates, but custom chat usage increased 19 times this year. I mean, that's a massive number.
Yeah. When I talk about AI teammates, that term is a little bit nebulous to many, but I put in there custom GPTs or Claude projects, Gemini gems, Copilot agents, or even Glean apps. And these are basically AIs that you can build to do a very specific task. And it's trained on your unique knowledge, your domain expertise, your unique data. And what happens is, what we saw in 2025 is that increase, that the usage jumped 19 times from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So now people are really realizing that it is more than just a question and answer machine. It can now be a teammate that you can outsource certain tasks to. And then ultimately, what's going to happen in 2026, you're going to connect them together so they're actually part of a workflow.
Yeah.
So that you as a human being orchestrates and you guide them. So, what's interesting is Moderna is
Yep.
one of the poster children for developing AI teammates. And their head of AI at the company basically says that they no longer have individual contributors. Each person at Moderna is actually a team of 5 because they have themselves and then 4 AIs. And the 4 AIs, I can't remember what they all are, but there's like a creative AI in there. There's a strategist AI and then so forth. So, these AI teammates are ultimately helping us not just do our work, but actually be our best selves when we can't be.
Well, and we're going to get into this in a minute as we really dive into what you're seeing happen in 2026, but I can't let this go right now. So that, the head of the body of those 5 teammates, which happens to be the human, right, must be incredibly innovative and strategic in order to manage those teammates. And that, I think, is one of the biggest misperceptions about how the best AI outputs happen. It's only as good as what you put into it. And that to me is why we have those that are using it very, very well and are using it in very innovative ways and strategic ways have moved way past a Q&A.
That's right. And I said this at the beginning. It's a mirror of our intent. And it's also a mirror of our knowledge, right? We don't give it enough context. We don't give it enough guidance or the right guidance. It will spit out answers based on what it knows. And what it knows is 98% of the internet, which is very general knowledge. And it's not going to be the highly relevant and insightful knowledge that we want that's based on our situation.
Yeah. You mentioned and you emphasize that people aren't the barrier, they're the multiplier. What does this look like inside of organizations today?
Yeah, so I think about trailblazers. Trailblazers are the ones that have a growth mindset, right? They're already beginning to reimagine the work. They're extremely curious and they are essentially experimenting and making that work happen and making an impact already. And I think these trailblazers, the ones that are really doing it right, are looking back and bringing others along. So I never say that anyone's behind or going to be left behind, because I do feel that each one of us has a responsibility to meet people where they're at and bring people along. Because one of my goals, or at least I'm going to try to help it, is people say that, hey, we built AI so that it can benefit all of humanity, and if we don't bring people along, then we're stuck with AI benefiting just a select few, and certainly something that I don't want to happen. So I think these trailblazers, at least the ones that I've seen do their trailblazing well, they're looking back and they're reaching back and bringing the rest of their teams along, so that the company and the organization as a whole gets the benefit out of it. So
how did they specifically bring them along? I mean, what made these trailblazers successful, and how they were able to create adoptions, not just the mindset that it's another tool, but really create adoption internally using AI?
yeah, the leaders have a huge role in this, right? As a leader, when you elevate these trailblazers and you give them the oxygen to shine. So, I've seen CMOs or CROs elevate these people, and they do show and tells. And the trailblazers are simply showing what they've done. And it's not just showing what the results are, but actually how, and making things more accessible, right? And they actually share best practices. They share what works and what doesn't work. When I do demonstrations, I rarely do canned demonstrations. I usually go live into ChatGPT or Gemini, because I can do a canned one and it always looks perfect and it has the perfect results, and AI isn't like that, right? It's an iteration and it's a collaboration with the AI. And what these trailblazers do really well is they show not just the good but also the bad and the ugly, because that's how people learn. And the other thing that they do is they help others by putting hands on keyboard. The other people have to put their hands on keyboard. You don't learn by watching somebody ride a bike. You learn by actually getting on the bike, actually falling and realizing that going faster keeps you up on the bike. So, and you don't know that until you get on the bike. Same thing with AI. You don't know that this thing is, pandering in many situations. So you have to learn how to challenge it. So I love what the trailblazers are doing, because they inspire what's possible, and they are leading the charge, not just to preserve their jobs, but to also bring the rest of the organization on board.
It's funny, as you're telling this story, really, I'm just envisioning so much of what we have accomplished as an agency with AI since really you introduced it to us years and years and years ago.
Not years and years ago, 3 years at most, Lori.
Here. And to be honest, we were using AI way in advance of that from a technology standpoint.
Yeah.
We were. I mean, we were, I think,
But not Gen AI, right? Yeah.
Exactly. But it's funny because I still get frustrated with, my kit, which is my GPT, like I would a teammate who's not really getting what I'm trying to like instill in them. You know what I mean? So it's truly, it becomes so humanistic. When you let it become so humanistic like that, I think it's when you get some of the best insights and output and innovation that can really impact what we're trying to achieve each and every day. I just wanted to include that because it is very real.
Yeah, and to your point, Lori, you get to a point where you feel that this thing is human, right? So I have laughed at AI. I have been surprised at AI, and AI has also made me cry, right? Because it has said some things in words that touched me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how can this machine say those things and make me cry. And I think we need to be super careful, because at some point, depending on your state of mind, people get impacted by, that relationship uh,
Yeah.
with AI.
Yeah, they really do. We all do. Before we move on, I want to ask, how transparency really plays a role with these trailblazers in maintaining trust as well. So how do they instill that need for trust at the end of the day and transparency?
Trust with AI or trust amongst the
I
team?
think trust among the team, like, yeah, trust among the team.
Yeah. So I think it's such an important point. I always have said that the hardest part of this transformation isn't AI. The hardest part is us, the human beings, because we have all sorts of fears and egos and passions, and we're messy, right? Humans are messy. AI is actually really, really simple. But trust is one of those things that will help people, through adoption. And honestly, not everybody will adopt. But one of the key things that I've seen work, in my profession and in the work that I do, trust is really important, because if they don't trust me, why would they want to learn from someone that they don't trust, right?
Right.
And I don't force my
Wish
opinions.
without a name. You just
That's right. And I try not to, push my opinions on people so forcefully, because we all have different situations. What I honestly say is, my biggest guidance for people is AI literacy and AI fluency is just baseline and table stakes. And regardless of how you feel about AI, you need to just understand it. And then when you have the understanding and when you have the literacy, then you can make better decisions for yourself, your family, for your teams and businesses and society. But when you don't understand it, then you risk being influenced by others that may or may not hold the same values as you do, right? So the trailblazers, they have to be super careful, because they're leading the charge. They're all in on AI and all sorts of things, and not everybody is there yet. And I think part of building trust is meeting people where they are and then bringing them along. You can't go hog wild on someone who has a lot of fear about AI. Deeply understanding where that fear is coming from, and going baby steps. And then at some point, I've worked with a lot of go-to-market leaders. Once you've upskilled and trained people, I do believe that the law of thirds will apply. Like, a third will lead, a third will follow, and a third will find their own way.
Yeah.
And we will need to be super empathetic and compassionate about that last third, and figure out a place for them where they can thrive. And that place might be another role, another group, or maybe somewhere outside a company.
So how do you, or actually what separated the teams that were able to get AI to stick from those that were in pilot mode or remained in mode?
Yeah, so this is where the leader really comes into to play, right? I'm a big fan of experimentation, because that's how we learn,
Yeah.
and give people the ability to learn in a safe environment, right? Like, allow them to shine and allow them to fail, because regardless, when we succeed, we win. When we fail, we learn, right? So there's lots of benefits to failing. However, at some point, we can't just be, experimenting all day long. We actually need to operationalize. We have to apply governance, and then we have to measure and report impact.
Right.
So the leader in particular needs to set some goals around, hey, what are some of these workflows that we are now reimagining that we can operationalize? And it doesn't mean like, you have to reimagine every single workflow in the company, but try one or two. Where do we have the biggest gaps? Where do we have some challenges in handoffs between teams? Where is it really slow? Where are we challenged when it comes to customer experience, right? So begin to reimagine those workflows rather than just fixing what's broken, because there's also this notion of, we can't just automate a broken process, because when we automate a broken process, it actually accelerates failure, right? You have, in some situations, you kind of just have to say, scrap that, reimagine this whole thing, because now we have a tool like AI that will allow us to do something different that wasn't possible before. So start with those 2 or 3 workflows and make sure that they're aligned to strategic initiatives, because strategic initiatives have a higher shot at succeeding, because they have owners, budget, timelines, resources. They have the eyes of the executive team, maybe the board. When you get to that level of specificity on what AI needs to do, then I think you begin to operationalize at scale. Make sure those 2 or 3 use cases land and they make an impact to the business. Then you keep adding to it, right? What's the next set of use cases? What's the next set of workflows?
GTM and ABM happen to be some very, very painful points, I think, implementation point for teams everywhere. It does not matter who you are. Do you have some examples with either one of those situations where a workflow, maybe even using an agent, as we move into 26 to really help with some of that innovation, has really helped improve not only the strategy, but the outcome?
Yeah, so let me give you some examples of that. I actually worked with a fairly large enterprise. They had about 180 marketers in this organization. And the SDR lead was one of those trailblazers. So he basically took the process for how they do email outreach to prospects and reimagined it. And he took 3 or 4 custom GPTs, chained them together, and also connected them to their email system. So these custom GPTs, one of them was a persona GPT that product marketing created. And then another one was a messaging GPT that allowed him to customize messaging based on the persona, chained to an email personalization GPT that was actually connected to their CRM system. So based on the contact that they're trying to get to, it then used the messaging for that specific persona, and then chained it to an email sequencer that allows them to have a sequence of emails depending on the response from the prospect, and then to their email system for the actual distribution. So
that's crazy.
It's crazy, right?
Colin and Dave on my team are going to go hog wild over that one.
So he chained this thing together. Wow. And basically gave access to his entire team. And basically he said, this was not possible before, because no one had the time to actually think about crafting messaging for each one of these contacts and actually trying to figure out what the sequence of emails might be depending on the response from the prospect. Now the AI is helping them build this workflow. And the funny part is, it wasn't just efficient, so it wasn't just improved productivity. They achieved open rates and engagement rates that went from 15% to 40%. That is a huge lift, right?
And that right there is what the boards and the CEOs making the investments are interested in.
That's right, because now we're not just talking about productivity. This is not just about faster. This is now about growth for the business.
Yeah, I love that. As we look ahead to 2026, what do you believe leaders are underestimating right now?
Yeah, so I think the workflow aspect of it, there are many that are building the individual teammates, right? So I've got a content drafter, I've got an email creator, I've got a pitch deck builder, and a competitive analyzer, right? At some point, we need to reimagine the work and begin orchestrating them into a workflow, much like what I described to you. McKinsey says that the workflows have the biggest impact in Gen AI, but only 21% of companies have begun to do it. So there's a lot of opportunity there, right? And I think it really is on us as humans to reimagine what that workflow looks like. So I think that's one of the things that's being underestimated right now. And I think we need to lean in on it in 2026, this year. The other one is, I think we need to pay very close attention to agents, where agents are going to be doing things on our behalf, not automation. Automation is when the human actually specifies the steps and the AI just executes on those steps. Agency is when the human sets a goal or says what it wants it to do, and then the AI figures out how to do it. Right? On its own, without the human, saying, go to this website and analyze this. You just have a goal of research the top 5 companies in this space. I want you to evaluate it and then come back with a response. And then it figures out how to do that research. So I think we will need to really think about what happens when an agent for our buyers or our customers is doing much of that work. So in our businesses, what do our websites need to look like? How do we cater not just to the human, but also to the agents that serve the humans? Because,
and that's where a lot of AI search comes into play as well, which I think people have underestimated the need for. And years ago, let's face facts. It was only 3 years ago. I was having a conversation very early on when Gen AI really, really started to take hold with some brands in the market, and their search queries and SEM in particular were really, decreasing, and they were asking all sorts of questions regarding what was happening. And I said, there's probably lots of good technical reasons, from a bidding standpoint, the basics here. But I really think that AI search, people using their go-to AI tool and searching for X, Y, and Z is impacting this more than we would ever guess. And that was early on. And I proved to be right. 3 years ago, in anticipating and knowing that was the issue that someone was, being affected by then. It's 20 times the impact today.
Yeah.
So regarding everything that we've talked about today, what advice do you have for people about how AI search in particular can be impacted with the right on-site, the right, in-market tools that are there to make sure that people are that it's connecting itself to the AI tools that are in the market?
Yeah. So such a big topic. And I think we learned very quickly last year that in AI search, AI forms an opinion about brands before a human being ever does. Right? So, before I even go to websites, I can just say, hey, evaluate a number of companies in the project management space. Here's my situation, and make a recommendation for what company best addresses these situations. And by the way, show me the pros and cons of each company, rate them on a scale of 1 to 5 on the following criteria and overall, and tell me what questions I should be asking each one. Also tell me what reviews are coming back for each one.
How much it should cost, yeah.
And are they on the Magic Quadrant, and why or why not, right? So you can imagine that's the prompt, and people are always asking me, hey, does anyone really prompt like that? I'm like, you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line to make a decision on some platform. And if you don't prompt that way, why wouldn't you, right? So if they're not prompting that way now, they will be prompting that way, especially for high ticket items or high value items. So it comes back and it gives you an analysis and it gives you a recommendation. Now, as a brand, you'd want to know how you're being positioned. It's not just about visibility. Okay, great. If you're visible, if you're not in those top responses, then you're not in the consideration set. So one of the things that we need to keep in mind is, are we visible? Second thing is, what is the sentiment? Okay, we got served up, but is it good? What is the sentiment about us? And the last thing is, are we being recommended for the right things? because we might actually be recommended for the wrong things. And that's no good either, right? So my guidance to people is don't actually chase the algorithm. Be authentically human and be helpful and say exactly in which situations we're good for and in which situations we're not. Don't do the typical thing of, just talking about our features and our benefits. Talk about it from the customer's perspective, because the AI will need to know that. The AIs can't translate features to the benefits to the customer or to the situation that it's good for. So we have to do that work on behalf of the AI.
That interpretation is so incredibly important. You mentioned expectations. How will expectations of marketing and comms teams change in this upcoming year?
I think huge, right? So if people haven't figured out how strategic marketing is by now, AI is putting a spotlight on it, right? I think this expectation around, we've always had this expectation for growth, right? We're a driver of growth for the business. And if companies have primarily thought about marketing as, arts and crafts, that needs to shift fairly quickly.
Or
You know,
not listening. They're not listening to this show, so you're fine.
Well, just that example
Yeah,
of AI search just shows,
unbelievable. Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
if we don't show up in AI search, that's largely a marketing function. Where are you going to get your leads, right? So anyway, so I Lori, help me with a question again. What was your question? I just lost it.
So it
Oh,
was
expectation.
expectations.
Yeah, I think, it will be more around driving growth for the
Yeah.
business. It's around the go-to-market motion. So I actually believe that the go-to-market motion and the functions and go-to-market will converge, because AI doesn't care about our silos, right? It doesn't care that this is marketing and sales and CS, which is actually good because our customers don't care either.
Yeah.
We have created these
All about
silos.
me. Yeah,
Huh?
it's all about me. What they care about is how are you going to impact me? So I don't care
That's
how
right.
I get there. Just what are you going to do? Yeah.
Yep. So alignment around a set of KPIs that matters to the customer and not necessarily to the functions. It's
Yeah.
going to be so critical. Like marketing, we had like MQLs and leads. Sales is like deals closed, and then CS was about retention. And we all knew that we could all meet those goals and the company would still tank, right? But if we had some sort of goal around, time to value or customer satisfaction, it's from the customer's perspective and everybody lines up to that, because now we have data that can be shared across and AI doesn't care about those silos. I think we'll be in a much better position to serve the customer.
Well, and you're bringing forward a lot of concepts regarding brand health, which I don't think enough people invest in.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, and I don't like using the word brand because people, depending on who you're talking to, there's this, people might think brand is like the logo, right? But I actually think brand is about building trust,
Yeah.
and I think more so in the world of AI, it's going to be a combination of product market fit. You've got a product that fits the need of the market and you've earned trust.
Yeah.
So you could see like a 2x2 matrix, right? You want to be at the top right-hand corner where you have exceptional product market fit and you have a lot of trust. There's a lot of companies today that have exceptional product market fit, but they haven't built the trust. That's not a good position to be in either.
No, not. And they don't have the awareness either, which makes it that much more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think the most dangerous, as we're closing in today? We could talk for hours.
I know.
We know that for sure. We just a glass of wine. But what do you feel is the most dangerous assumption leaders are making about AI as we head into 2026?
Yeah, I think the most dangerous assumption is that you can just give people AI tools and some generic AI training and assume that people will adopt and you will get the best, um, the most out of AI and benefits to the company, right? It's a super dangerous assumption, because to my point earlier, the hardest part isn't AI. The hardest part is change management. It's the humans, right? We have to inspire what's possible. It's one thing to look at ChatGPT and it says, ask me anything. You start typing and asking questions. And another to actually build these workflows that reimagine what's possible. And now it's not just about productivity, it's now about driving growth. To go from a single conversation box where you type something to reimagining workflows, there's a big Grand Canyon in the middle, right? And you can't achieve that by simply giving people a bunch of tools and say, hey, you can summarize emails for you, can do research for you. People need to see themselves in the use cases. They need to see inspiration use cases by function in the go-to-market organization. The impact. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, you mentioned inspired. You always inspire me from a professional standpoint, from a personal standpoint. You're a dear friend. And I appreciate so much you sharing your insights today and your inspiration with our very, very loyal listeners. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn or my website, which is growthpath.net. And on LinkedIn, subscribe to my newsletter because I share many experiences and case studies and practical tips.
Well, we appreciate that. And listeners, we're going to have a link to one of Liza's most forward-looking impacts that she's written about today, which is also on LinkedIn. So we'll share that for you in the show notes. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can reach me on LinkedIn as well, Lori Sartorius-Jones. Liza, my dear, dear friend, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori. Have a great day.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.